In our previous session, we have created a MySQL database on top of a Docker container. We don't need to install any particular softwares or agents on top of our laptop so that our system will be clean and neat. We can create as many as records or tables on top of this database, and today we are going to integrate this database with our large language model. So as and when we need it, we can give a natural language input so that our large language model will convert it in the form of SQL queries, and it will pass this SQL queries on top of the database, and it will retrieve the desired result. Of course, the result may not be in the desired format. We need to do a certain cleansing transactions in order to make sure the results will be accurate. Once we have this result in place, we can hand it over to our streamline chat interface in the form of data frames so that it can visualize or tabularize according to our business requirements. We will do that streamline integration in the next lecture, but in this lecture the aforementioned database will be integrating with the large language model so that we will get a proper response. Without wasting much time, let's move on to the video. Good day guys, this is Melvin Satishan here. Before we proceed, we should make sure that the Docker container is up and running. In our case, it's up and running. Perfect. The next step, we have to make sure that the container is accessible and the database is created. For that, Docker container ls-a Docker container, or rather Docker exe hyphen id, then the container id followed by /bin/bash. So it's accessible, and MySQL -u root -b password. So show databases. So we are able to see the database, and here it is the GenAI. Let's use GenAI and show tables. So here it is, incidents table is there, and if you try select count star from incidents, if you look at it, you have 100 records. That's more than enough. Now the next step we need to do is, let's open Python notebook, and in our Python notebook we have the desired modules imported. The first one is Chatolama for the chatting purpose. Second is SQL database in order to initialize the database connectivity, create SQL query chain for performing the certain database query with the help of LLM, and we have a chain to perform the various runnable chaining transactions, and query SQL database tool for querying the database, and we have the runnable pass-through that will make sure that the input will be available from the beginning till end of the chain. And we have another 3 modules called system message prompt template, chat prompt template, and human message prompt template to refine our existing query accordingly. And the last is string output parser that will make sure that the desired or the response will be converted in the form of string, so that it would be so easy for us to pass it to the next chain, and it will give us a crisp and clear output rather than the undesired output. Okay, so once that part is completed, we have imported the base URL and the model, and we created a large language model instance. So that much part is completed, so LLM is ready. Next we are going to create a database connector. So db is equal to, so here we will go SQL database from URI, and here the URI that we are going to give is MySQL plus PyMySQL : then first we have to give a root as a username and the password followed by a colon @localhost/gen AI. So this is the database. Perfect. So that part is completed. Next we are going to do SQL chain. So SQL underscore chain equal to create SQL query chain, and we have to pass both LLM and the database so that we would be able to perform the necessary queries in it. Let's pass LLM and DB. So our SQL chain is ready. Question equal to how many low priority incidents are there. Okay, I'm gonna ask this question. Okay, our question is ready. Perfect. Next we are going to do a response equal to SQL chain dot invoke, and here we are going to pass the question, right? We'll pass the question and it is being executed. Okay, all right, so it thrown some error, so let's figure out what is that error. So I'm going to give here the SQL chain, and if we execute it, it is going to be input is runnable lambda. Okay, and what is the type of input? So it's like a dictionary comprehension is happening here, so that our input must be a dictionary. Okay, take this and we will put this in the form of, first is question, and the answer is going to be or the value is going to be question. Here it's a variable. Perfect. So let's execute it. It's working as expected. It may take some time, but definitely it will work. And 19 seconds. 26 seconds. Okay, perfect. So let's print the response. Print response. We don't want this capital letter response, we want only small letter response. Perfect. See, there are one low priority incident. The query is select count from incident. That is perfect, where incident priority equal to low. Okay, for that we are going to import something called system. So here we are going to define you are a helpful assistant. You may answer user query from the provided context. Okay, we are saying that you have to look at the context and answer the query. If you don't know, say I don't know. So that part is completed. Perfect. Next we are going to convert in the form of a system message prompt. So system equal to system message prompt template from template, and here we will give system message. So that part is completed. Next is going to be our prompt. So prompt equal to, first we have to provide 3 double quotes and answer your question based on the provided context only. Based on the provided context only. Okay, if you don't know, say I don't No. All right. So next we have to provide certain parameters, right? So that we are going to define here. Okay, and say I don't know, and first thing we have to define context. So context is going to be context. That part is done. Next is going to be question. That's definitely the value will be question. Next is going to be answer. Answer remains as it is. Next we will run it, and we will have to create a message prompt, right? So here we are going to define prompt equal to human message prompt template from template and prompt. Right, our human message prompt template is ready. And let's say we will do, rather than this prompt, we will say user, so that it will be it would be much more clean and neat, right? What is that error? Okay, I'll do this way. And from template system user. Okay, now I'm going to assemble messages equal to system comma user. Okay, our message is ready. Now template equal to, we are going to create an LLM template. For that, so chat prompt template and in bracket messages. That's enough. Now if we give template, we have the chat prompt template, which is gonna accept the input dictionary, context, and question. Okay, then what is going to be the next step? We have to create a template chain underscore chain template LLM and string output parser. So what it will do is, first we are going to create a template chain. In the template chain we have the template already here, right? Once we pass the template, we have to provide or inject it into the large language model so that it will be processing the template. Once that processing part is completed, we have to stringify the output so that it will be clean and neat. Perfect. So template chain is ready. I'm going to create a function here. So def then query underscore format, and in bracket we have two parameters, right? Context comma question. So this two parameters we have to pass it, and the response is going to be return here template chain dot invoke, and in bracket we will have to pass this parameter. So that would be something like this way. Question is going to be question, context is going to be context, so it will be returning the response. We have created our query format function that will format our database query according to our requirement, and it will take two input arguments as well. Let's test its functionality. Maybe response equal to query format, and the first is context and the second is question. Okay, let's come to our previous segment here, and we have already invoked a question and we received a response. So there are only one incident with a low priority. This is not exactly right because we have many incidents with a low priority, but we have received this proper query. That query we are passing it as a context. So the context value is going to be a response. which means SQL chain, we have executed it and we got a response. That response is going to be the context. And here we have something called the question. The question we will retain as it is because we asked the same question. We are repeating the same question here. How many low priority incidents? You must return only MySQL queries. Now, what is going to happen here? Let's see. It is being executed. Let's print a response. Okay. We have received the proper SQL query. Now, our next step is we have to convert in the form of LLM. So for that, we have some decorator called chain and we will create a define. Let's say that refined query. Okay, and in this refined query, we will pass all our two argument into a one. Let's define it as input. So the input is going to be our dictionary. So we need to extract our input, the question as well as the context. How do we do that? So context equal to input, and from there we are going to take a context, and next question equal to input, and inside that we have the question. Okay, so we have two parameters here. Next we are going to define a guidelines. So that's going to be use this context to fetch the correct SQL query for the following question. Okay, we are going to tell just fetch the right SQL query for our question. Okay, that question we would be defining it in the end. Okay, now do not enclose SQL query and do not add descriptions and preambles. Okay, and what else we can define? You must return only single SQL query. Okay, because it should not provide us additional details that we require. So that's it in this case, and here it is a format segment, right? So we have to define format, and inside format we have to define our question. Perfect. So this question will pass to this curly braces here. So that is what is happening here. Okay, now our next step, we are going to write this function inside this wrapper function. So what we are going to update here is response equal to query format, right? We have the query format function. Inside the query format function, it is going to take two input arguments. Let's say context and question. We have two parameters. The context is going to be our context, and we have a question here. What we did is we took the question, we extracted the question from input, then we have defined a guideline, and inside that guideline we wrapped this question. So there's a specific guideline in place. We would be adding this or combining this guideline and the context together so that we will get the most refined query. Let's do that. Question is here, in our case the question is going to be guideline. Okay, a small change in it. Finally we are going to return whatever the result to our function. Okay, perfectly we have framed that part. Now it's a time to execute the function. So for that, response, again we will say, or final underscore response equal to refined query. And since it is a function but we have wrapped it with this chain, final response equal to refined query. In our case it's a function but it is wrapped with this chain, so that we have to use the invoke. Then inside that we have to provide the input. So two parameters to be defined, so that we are going to declare it as a dictionary. The first one is going to be the question, and the question remains as it is because we have already asked the question, right? Here we asked the question, and we executed this SQL chain with this function, right? So we need this SQL query. So we are going to do the further modifications on this query, or we are going to validate this query. So let's be more precise and focused. So this we will define it as a context. So in this case, here we have executed SQL chain and we got the response. That response we are going to add it here. In this context is going to be the response. Okay, excellent. Now let's execute this. It is being executed, and let's print the final result. Final response is going to be yes. Select count from incidents where incident priority equal to low. Now one more thing we can do here. We have a or again last response equal to date. We have already created a database connector, and previously we checked how do we execute the query, right? db.run, and here we are passing this final response or this query, so that this query is going to be executed within the database. Let's see. Okay, let's take a restart. Now let's run everything once again. Because we have this particular SQL parameter. So let's figure it out. One by one, everything is being executed. Okay, now let's print the last response. Now we have received 37 low priority incidents. However, if you notice, we have executed various functions from various levels and all. It is pretty much complex now. Define db query, and inside that we are going to define query as an argument. So in this case, what we will do is db.run and the query. Okay, so the database connection we have already created here, and we are going to return that value. And let's copy the whole complete content here, and inside it So we will be executing the DB query, and DB query will be accepting the query input, and it will run it and provide us the output. So let's do that and feel it. Now here we are going to execute as last underscore response again DB query, and in bracket we have to define final response. Okay, so it is being executed, and if I go print last response, it is providing us the same output. So we have one function, and then we have another function here, and we have this function is already wrapped it over there, so that let's not consider that, and rest of the things are aligned. Only thing is pending SQL chain, I mean this part, SQL chaining part, that we will add it, nothing to worry. So we are going to create our final chain. Let's say main underscore chain equal to, it's going to be in a bracket because multiple components are going to be added. In this, first thing we need is context, so that part is fine. Next is going to be the question, that is also gonna update it here. So input is ready. Next is going to be our refined query, because we will be giving the input, then it will be getting processed. That processed data will go to the refined query. So let's do refined query. Finally, we are going to query the same query to the database for the final result. So that DB query. So we have everything in place. Now here is the tricky part. Here we have the context, right? So context, what we are going to define, the context which we are going to define is SQL chain, because we already defined here SQL chain, right? So SQL chain invoke question. The question is going to be the question input, we would be processing it, so that will be going to the SQL chain. So the SQL chain is going to be invoked here, right? That whatever the SQL chain executed, whatever the SQL chain executed here, it is the response. This response we have already there in the context, we declare it here, right? And the next is the question. The question will remains as it is. So what we need to do here is runnable pass through. We have to make sure that whatever the input is going, that input should go to this runnable pass through, and it will make it forever till end of this workflow. That input will be there. So that's the reason we are defining here the runnable pass through. So we have everything in place. Let's execute this. Now final response. Final response is going to be what is needed. Let's start from here. The first segment, we need the SQL chain. What is its expectation? So main underscore chain dot invoke, right? And here it is going to be, because the SQL chain, right? So SQL chain is expecting a dictionary. So we will define question, and the question is going to be the question, because we already defined this question, or we can copy it over there if you want. Let's copy this. It has been copied. And one more thing I'll tell you. So here let's understand that main underscore chain. If you look at it, its input is going to be a runnable lambda. So whatever the dictionary that we would be passing it, it will do an iteration inside the dictionary. So this way it is going to be do. So it will already extract our question, so that we don't need to worry at all. And the runnable pass through will make sure that our input is persistent across the workflow. Okay. Now the question, and we are invoking the main chain. So what will happen here is, first SQL chain will be getting invoked, and it will get the context. Also we are passing this question to question here, the runnable pass through, so that the question is already there here as well. Okay, and next, once this part is completed, the SQL chain is having the necessary output. So this context and question, this two inputs will go to the refined query. That input is going to be a dictionary, right? So this dictionary will be passing it into the refined query. Remember that here the question contains the question and the context contains the necessary rules, everything which required. So this, it will go to the refined query, and finally once the refined query is processed, the SQL database query, that query will be passing it into the database query. So total 3 layer of transactions are happening here. So please understand in a better manner. So this is quite tricky stuff. If we are thorough on the chaining process, this is just like a peanut, no rocket science in it. Okay, now let's execute the final response. It's calling everything. Let's wait for a minute to complete this transaction. Also, let's print our final response. If you look at it, 37 is the final response. We performed everything. Finally, we have created a very nice chain here that will accept all the values, or only we need to provide our question. So that will pass it to the necessary chains, and it will be calling the necessary modules, and it will provide us the final response. Okay, so we got the final response here. So this is basically the Hardway, where we have created our own functions and we have passed the database queries and fine-tuned everything, and finally we executed and received the response. So by doing this, it will make sure that we will be very clear on what is happening in the behind scenes, and it will help us in troubleshooting the scenarios and in helping us to create very lengthy chains and complex chatbots, right? But we have another option. We will be integrating an agent here. The agent will do all these transactions and will make much more our life easier. So since this video is quite lengthy, I will consider in our very next video as a supplementary session to this LLM integration with the database. Okay, and we'll see you in the next lecture. And I would strongly recommend to write this around 10-15 times, and so that it will be on your fingertips, because there are plenty of modules are importing. You don't need to by heart each and everything, because it's well documented in the LangChain community. All we need is how do we apply and how do we chain the functions, all those basic things, and how do we adjust it. This predominantly we should focus on the prompt engineering and the data modeling part. So that's it for now, and we'll see you in the supplementary lecture. So thank you so much for your time again, and have a great rest of the day. Melvin Satishan is signing off now.